and we'll be returning in August. I'm sorry. We'll be returning in August. I've lost my page here. With a three-part series on cemeteries with Emily Ford, who's a New Orleans cemetery scholar, and she's going to be doing 3 weeks talking about that. And then next week, we're going to have Barry Anklet doing From the Behind the Mask, the essays on South Louisiana Mardi Gras runs. So I hope you take advantage of this free membership program. All of our member lectures are always free to members, and if you're not a member, they're just a small fee. But you very quickly can add up and pay for your membership very quickly by just attending just a few memberships. So tonight's lecture, we're going to be talking about po' boys, and this is, you think it's such an easy, simple topic, but I'm sure Burke's going to talk to us a lot about the history of po' boys and basically how they also, and also at the same time, talk about our city as well, and how much it defines us for food and culture and everything. It's not just, never in New Orleans is it just food. It's always food and culture and history. So it's all of these things. So our lecturer tonight is Burke Bischoff. He is the author of Po' Boy, Louisiana True, which just came out. And I want to welcome Burke tonight. And thank you for being here tonight, Burke.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Jason. I really do appreciate it. So yes, my name is Burke Bischoff. I am the author of LSU Press's Po' Boy book, which is actually part of a series of books called Louisiana True. And each different book in the series focuses on a different aspect of Louisiana's culture. Mine is about po' boys. We just had one recently come out about gumbo, and there are also different books in the series on Mardi Gras beads, Mardi Gras Indians, and the brown pelican. So a little bit about myself. I am the current executive editor for Where We At magazine in New Orleans. I basically have to put my eyes on every single piece of written content and anything that goes up on our website. So anything related to articles, looking at photographs, many different hats I wear at that magazine. But I've also worked for WYES TV in the past, as well as my college newspaper, the Maroon newspaper. I'm a graduate of Loyola University, 2015 graduate of Loyola University, and I'm very appreciative of my time there and all the skills that I've built up through all those past works. Um, so yes, as Jason was saying, I am here to talk a little bit about this beloved little thing. This is, in case anyone doesn't know, a po' boy. This is a very famous sandwich birthed here in New Orleans. And there's all kinds of little interesting history, facts, little odds and ends with the sandwich that you would never really even really think about, just being a simple little sandwich as it is. Uh, One thing that is kind of interesting to know about is the name itself. A po' boy is New Orleans slang or Yat slang, if anyone has heard that before, for a poor boy. And the name came from a really important event in New Orleans' history that really cemented the sandwich's popularity in the city and its foothold in the city's culture, history, and legacy. And it really came down to an incident in 1929. Uh, this was right before the Great Depression, and uh, union members of the Amalgamated Association of Electric Street Railway Employees, Division 194, They were a division of local streetcar workers in New Orleans. And they were actually trying to negotiate for better pay. And when that was happening, unfortunately, they had to go on strike because their demands were not being met. So while they were on strike, unfortunately, that saw a lot of people being without work and without a means to really support themselves. So the popular story connected to po' boys is of these two men named Benny and Clovis Martin. The two of them were originally from Graceland, Louisiana, and they found themselves in New Orleans first as streetcar conductors until they eventually opened up their own restaurant called the Martin Brothers Coffee Stand and Restaurant in the French Market on North Peters and Ursuline. So when the streetcar strike happened and a lot of these streetcar workers ended up without work, the Martin brothers had really put their sympathies out to them and figured, hey, we're one of you. We're going to help you in this time of need. In fact, they actually put out a notice in the local paper. Let me see if I can find where it is written down in here. Da, 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 da. Uh, yes, okay. So they actually put out a notice in the local news where they said, "We are with you, heart and soul. And anytime you're around the French Market, don't forget to drop in at Martin's Coffee Stand and Restaurant, corner of Ursuline and North Peters. Your meal is free to any members of Division 194. We are with you till hell freezes over, and when it does, we will furnish the blankets to keep you warm." So they were definitely keeping true to their promise of giving uh, uh, these people in need free meals. In fact, the popular story that goes along with the Martin brothers is that whenever one of these streetcar workers would come in, uh, either Benny or Clovis would yell out, "Here comes another poor boy." And that's what is attributed, largely attributed to how the sandwich got its name. Um, and one important aspect of that Martin Brothers story is actually more to do what holds the sandwich together, and that is the French bread. Because in the beginning, when the Martin brothers were giving out the sandwiches to the streetcar workers, they their bread that they were creating for them was actually kind of shaped like a football, if you can imagine that. And when the Martin brothers would be cutting up the bread for these guys, it wasn't coming out in equal amounts. People wouldn't be getting either the fat middle piece or the skinnier end pieces. So people weren't getting the same amount. So the Martin brothers figured, okay, well, how are we going to fix this? What are we going to do about it? They actually went and approached John Gendusa of John Gendusa Bakery over on Mirabeau Avenue. And they approached him and said, "Hey, can you do anything to help with this bread situation?" And Gendusa told them, "Well, I'm originally from Sicily, and over where I'm from, we're used to this really long, elongated bread, kind of like a baguette. How about I try making that for y'all and see if that works better?" And through that interaction, through John Jandusa helping the Martin brothers out, we now have the uh, traditional New Orleans po' boy French bread that we are used to seeing on all kinds of bakeries, po' boy shops, and really that cemented both French bread and po' boys legacy in history. Uh, and a large portion of the book is really mostly focused on history, not only on the history of po' boys, but also the history of some of the more well-known bakeries and po' boy shops that we have in New Orleans. I went and talked to Leidenheimer Baking Company and John Janduce's Bakery to get their history and also their aspect of traditional New Orleans French bread. I also went and talked to uh, some of the well-known po' boy shops in the city, some of the old liner ones like Parkway Bakery, Don Melissa's, um, Shortstop Po' Boys in Metairie. But I also made sure to cover some newer po' boy shops that have really made a name for themselves, such as Melba's and Killer Po' Boys on Dauphine Street. Um, uh, another thing that I wanted to focus on with the book was also show a connection between New Orleans po' boy and also the Vietnamese banh mi, which is really gotten a lot of love in the city ever since it came over with our new Vietnamese American community in the 70s. And I went over and talked to the president of Dong Fong Bakery and got their history and also how there's a real connection between the po' boy and the banh mi, not only through similar histories of New Orleans and Vietnam being French colonies, but also just the same general look to both sandwiches. While they are very, very similar, in fact, so similar that a lot of local Vietnamese restaurants will label their banh mi's as Vietnamese po' boys. Uh, but there's definitely a real connection to the two sandwiches, even though they're not 100% uh, sim 100% the same. While the French bread that the po' boy uses is a little bit more flaky for the crust, and the interior is more airy, so that it doesn't affect the taste of whatever filling that you have in the sandwich. Banh mi bread tends to have a similar crispy exterior, but also the interior is a little bit more dense, kind of more on the white bread-ish uh, kind of spectrum. And plus, while po' boys can have a number of different fillings to them, banh mi's tend to have the same general filling outlook to them, such as jalapenos, cucumber, uh, pickled carrots, pickled daikon, cilantro, uh, aioli, pate, and like that. Uh, One thing that I kind of learned throughout making the book um, is just really how adaptive and how uh, creative our local po' boy shops have really taken the po' boy to be. I've come to realize just from the interviews I did from the book and just from my own personal experience, really anything that you can fill a po' boy sandwich with, it'll still be considered a po' boy as long as you have the correct French bread on it. Um, Really, it's a wonder how adaptive the sandwich can be as long as you have the correct French bread on it. I've, of course, you have the traditional fillings that everyone loves to get, such as fried shrimp, fried oyster, uh, hot sausage, which is what I have here. That's hot sausage is definitely my one of my favorite po' boys to get. But you also have people and chefs really uh, getting creative with what they can put together and still call a po' boy. When I was visiting Killer Po' Boys on Dauphine, and uh, uh, I was able to try their Thai barbecue tofu po' boy, and that's made up with an Asian barbecue sauce, basil leaves, peanut, and a few other stuff on there, and it was very good. And it was definitely a different take on the sandwich, this whole vegetarian approach to it, which is really not too heavily explored in the city. But I mean, there's all kinds of different places that have been experimenting with the sandwich and really testing the limits of what they can do. When I went and visited Mahoney's on Magazine Street for lunch one day, I ended up trying their fried chicken liver and coleslaw po' boy, and that was delicious. Even in outer areas of greater New Orleans, you'll find interesting creations. Like when I was at Chateau Orleans in Marrero, they actually have a Greek po' boy where they've done it up with gyro meat, feta cheese, tzatziki sauce on it, and really, really did it up on in a different way that I had never really seen before. Me too. So, and really, that creativity, I feel that has kind of kept the sandwich alive throughout the over close to 100 years that the sandwich has really made itself known within the city. I mean, you can look at the Oak Street Po' Boy Festival that happens every year and just see the different vendors who have made all kinds of different creations with their po' boys and how popular that has just been getting and continues to be throughout the city. I went there and experienced it last year, and just the amount of people that were at that festival just there to solely enjoy New Orleans po' boy sandwiches is amazing because that this is definitely a sandwich that is important to our history and our culture. It really, I believe, deserves a spot in the New Orleans food pantheon alongside jambalaya, red beans and rice, etouffee, and the different dishes like that. Because it has such a long history in the city. It it can be used to really connect people of all different types of backgrounds. It doesn't matter really what social class you are, what race you are, or anything like that. People in the city love their po' boys. They gotta have their po' boys, and it's something that I feel that our local po' boy shops and the Oak Street Po' Boy Festival and people who within the city who just love this sandwich are helping to preserve it and help to keeping keep it alive for many, many more years. And it's and something that I would absolutely hate to lose. And I hope it can absolutely continue its longevity. And really, a way for that to be done is just to kind of help support local businesses as much as possible, and really, especially our two traditional French bread bakeries of Leidenheimer's and John Gindusa's. Because without that traditional French bread, there's no po' boy. There's the bread is absolutely more important than anything else associated with the sandwich. If the bread is not correct, if it's too spongy, if it's too dense, if it's not completely uh, the correct shape or even the correct taste to it, it's just not a French bread, and it's not a po' boy. Uh, so we have so much of the city is unique, whether it be the music, the history, the culture, and especially the food that you really it's just irreplaceable. It really is just irreplaceable. The contributions that New Orleans has done not only to the United States but also to the world at large. When I was doing research for the book, I was seeing po' boys pop up in places I would never even think to see them in. They're found a place in Athens, Greece, that said they were selling po' boys. There's a place in South Africa that specifically are selling New Orleans style po' boys. When I was in California visiting family, and they have a large outdoor market in Los Angeles with all kinds of different food vendors. They actually have a vendor selling New Orleans food. And of course, they got po' boys on their menu. And if I remember correctly, they specifically stated as having Leidenheimer French bread. Um, don't quote me on that. I could be misremembering, but I feel like that I definitely remember seeing it. So just the sandwich is it is New Orleans. It very much is New Orleans. It from the Martin Brothers in 1929 when they helped uh, the striking streetcar workers to even before then when the baguette um, or bread that was uh, even before what we know as New Orleans French bread now was introduced to the area from the during French colonial times. It's just a version. The sandwich, the bread, just different versions of it have been around this area for such a long, long time. And I really hope it doesn't ever lose its luster within New Orleans for sure, because I definitely believe in the sandwich being a true representation of New Orleans culture, and I truly hope that it continues to have a long shelf life.
Burke, what is the timeline for muffalettas versus the poor boy in terms of when muffalettas were created?
I actually have to do a little bit more research onto that. I didn't really focus too much on muffaladas in the book, but I do know that Central Grocery
Right.
in French Quarter is really what is attributed to the muffaletta, and also the mainly the bread associated with the muffaletta sandwich. I have to double check on my dates on that. I think it might have come out after the streetcar strike, but I don't, again, don't quote me on that.
And these, the Martin, is this the same people that have Martin's deli and whatever? Or are those descendants of those?
That I'm not too sure about. I know the Martin brothers had a number of different locations around the city. I think if I remember correctly, the last restaurant of theirs closed up in the 1970s, if I'm remembering correctly. So if that is them, I'd have to look into it a little bit more.
Jason might know. He knows the Martins.
Let me
Uh,
ask a couple. Oh, sorry. Um, we do have a couple questions, Burke. Do you want to ask the questions about that? Take a couple questions.
Yeah, sure,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Joseph asked, "What was the original po' boy at Benny and Clovis Martin's restaurant?"
So that is a very good question. It's not particularly known what exactly what the original sandwich was. Different people have different theories on what it could have been. The most common story or common iteration that I heard when I was making the book is the French fry po' boy. So that involves uh, if you've been to some of the older line po' boy shops like Parkway Bakery, they do that. Some of the other po' boy shops in the city do that sandwich, and it's basically French fries with uh, roast beef debris or roast beef gravy on it. And the reason for that being or even that being considered one the po' boy that the Martin brothers were serving was that it was something that was cheap to make, fast to make, and you can make it uh, a lot of it without really breaking the bank. But I've also heard people say that it might have been cold cut po' boys because that can be very fairly inexpensive to do as well. But largely, people believe it's the French fry po' boy.
And going deeper into your talk about the bakeries, when it comes to Gendusas and Leidenheimer,
Mhm.
how important is the po' boy in terms of their business, of their bread, of their selling their bread to the po' boy shops? I mean, is that as like half of their business or more than half their business? I mean, is it this? I mean, is it it's the business? I mean, the bakery basically go out of business if the po' boys, the people stop eating the po' boys and stuff like that.
I I don't know if they would be completely going out of business. I do know that both Leidenheimers and John Gendusas both serve a variety of different breads, including muffalata breads, pistolets. I think Leidenheimer does. I'm trying to think of the breadcrumbs, yeah. And they definitely do have different products that they specialize in. But from my talks with both the president and owners of both Weinheimer and Gendusas, the French bread loaves is really a big part of their business, and that just the amount and with just the amount of po' boys that are sold within the city, I have to imagine that is a real uh, big chunk of their business right there. So if it's hard to say if everyone just decided to completely stop eating po' boys in New Orleans, if that would really detrimentally affect both Gendusas and Leinheimers. I like to think maybe, but I don't foresee people giving up on eating po' boys in New Orleans at all. I mean, just looking at the longevity of both bakeries really proves how much of a staying power both of them have. Uh, Gendusas just recently turned 100 years old, and uh, Leinheimer's turned 125 years old a couple of years back too. So I hope nothing would happen to either one of them. I'm fairly confident that neither one is going to be going away anytime soon.
Margaret asks, "What's the secret to New Orleans French bread?" In quotes, French bread in other parts of the U.S. comes nowhere close, much heavier and denser.
From when I talked to uh, Sandy Wan of Lionheimer Baking Company and Jason Gendusa of Gendusa Bakery, they kind of explained it to me that really the climate of South Louisiana and New Orleans has a big uh, deal or to do with affecting the po' boy bread. Um, if you because they have to take into account the humidity and the heat that we have down here. Because if you leave the bread out too long, the humidity is going to really affect it. Or if you don't make it correctly, it's just not going to be the same. So both of them have really perfected their recipes to account for the humidity that we have to deal with in New Orleans. In fact, I remember a story that Jason Gendusa told me for the book, where some of his family were trying to open up or trying to do French bread, I think over in Texas. I think Houston, but I might be misremembering that off the top of my head. Um, but they had the same supplies, they had the same recipe, did it exactly the same as the original bakery in New Orleans. And according to him, it just wasn't the same. So I really think the climate has a lot to do with affecting traditional French bread.
When you're talking about the banh mi, was the banh mi brought over from the Vietnamese, or did the Vietnamese come here and turn a po' boy into the bread into the sandwich that we know as the banh mi?
I I believe there might have been uh, uh, members of our Vietnamese community who brought what they were used to in Vietnam in terms of the banh mi bread, and either tried to keep it as close to the recipes that they were used to in Vietnam, or tried to adapt with new products that they couldn't get anymore or only had available to them. I know Lynn Garza, the president of Dong Fong Bakery, uh, she was telling me her father was the one who really was creating the one who created the banh mi bread that Dong Fong is known for, and he kept trying different recipes, trying different things until he felt that he finally got it right. And I think the results speak for themselves in that regard, just from Dong Fong's popularity and just the status that they've gotten over the years. I mean, uh, if you are able to win a James Beard Award for Best American Bakery, then they're for sure doing something right over there.
And one more question: how did Hurricane Katrina affect po' boys? Did we lose a lot of po' boy places during Katrina, or did we just seem just a surge of po' boy restaurants, in the last 15 to 20 years?
For the exact number of po' boy shops that we lost, I'm not entirely sure, but I can say that Hurricane Katrina definitely helped. As bad of a tragedy that it was, I think it helped prove the resilience that our local po' boy shops and bakeries have, and how they're able to get through that difficult time and really persevere and keep going. I mean, they've had every single business that I talked to for the book was affected in some way by Hurricane Katrina, whether it be having to close up for a good couple of months, completely losing their inventory, uh, losing workers, having to clean up, or just all kinds of things that it you never wish for anyone in the city, or really anywhere at all, to ever go through. Um, so I think that with their survival in the city rebuilding itself, I think we've definitely seen a surge in people in places who want to continue to keep the po' boy alive and keep it plentiful within the city. I mean, I think the Oak Street Po' Boy Festival is a good example of that. Just the sheer amount of businesses that take part in that festival every single year. I think they get either around or over 40 different restaurant vendors taking part in in that festival every single year, and it's definitely, I think, seen a surge in the city after Katrina.
Fantastic. Well, I hope everybody is going to go out and go get a po' boy tomorrow, maybe a shrimp, maybe a roast beef, or as Burke had, a hot sausage po' boy, which also is, I'd say, an underrated po' boy. So, Burke, I want to thank you so much for talking about the po' boy tonight, and we want to congratulate you on the book, and we hope to see everybody next Tuesday for our last lecture of the spring. So, Burke, thank you so much for speaking tonight.
Well, thank y'all very much for having me. It was a pleasure, and it was definitely great to talk about just this simple little sandwich, and how it's irreplaceable. This sandwich is New Orleans, and I really do hope all of you get some uh, good sandwiches for dinner tomorrow, or uh, uh, for the rest of the month. For sure. Let's support local, support this important aspect of our history and our culture, and let's keep it alive for another 100 years.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Well, Burke, thank you so much for talking tonight. And we will see everybody next Tuesday night for talking about Cajun Mardi Gras. So thank you so much.
Thank y'all. Have a good night.
All right, bye.